Just say you're working on something in your life, like you're trying to build a skill, or you're trying to build a business, or you're trying to find love, you're trying to change your circumstances in some way. Let's say that this is a bit of a struggle for you, and maybe even at times gets you a bit down, gets you a bit frustrated, gets you a bit demoralized. Then the really cool thing is that there's probably something that you're doing that's quite simple, quite easy to change, and once you change it, like all of a sudden, all of those, feeling down, feeling frustrated, feeling demoralized by all this, all of that just goes away. Like it's a very simple change. You can do it fast, and it's just wildly effective. And even if you're not the sort of person who, gets a bit frustrated by the challenges of life sometimes, you probably know people who do. So this is a really useful thing to know how to do to keep in your back pocket because once you know how to spot this, it's pretty obvious. And it's just you'll see this everywhere. It's quite extraordinary. So if you're ready to learn something which might very well just change your life and change the lives of many people around you, keep listening because this is going to get awesome. So when folks talk about being like frustrated with the challenges of life, when they feel like they're not where they want to be, that can look like many different things. Like for some people, they feel stuck. They feel as though they're making no progress. They feel as if yesterday is the same as today and is going to be the same as tomorrow. That's very different from someone who looks at someone who's, say, way more successful than they are and just seeing like all of the ways that they are doing things differently, all the results that they get that are really different from theirs. And it's like, I want to like be financially free and I don't have financial freedom, but this person over here has financial freedom and look at all the things that they can do that I can't do. And some people, they don't look at others, they look at their imagined ideal future. So it's like, yeah, once I've got this skill or once I find true love or whatever it is, then life's going to be completely different. But until now, like between now and whenever that is, there's just this enormous gap that doesn't seem in like it can be crossed. Like there's just so many things that need to change in order to get there. And there are other ways that people can feel frustrated, people can feel demoralized by their circumstances in life and so where they are and where they'd want to be. But they tend to follow some pretty simple patterns. And I'll run through a few of these patterns right now, and I'll invite you to play along with this. Like, if there's something in your life where you're like, I really want this to be different, and it's frustrating that it's not the way I want it to be, then keep that in mind and just sort of test the waters, see where you are against some of these patterns. So I'm a practitioner of this little thing called neuro-linguistic programming, often called NLP, and I like to think I'm pretty good at it. And there's also Dr. Richard Bandler, who is also a practitioner of NLP. He's one of the co-creators of NLP. And yeah, he's also very good at it. And so if I was to think about, like, let's say that like, I'm thinking about like my own NLP skills, and I just happen to be thinking about Bandler at the same time. There's many ways that I could do this. There's many ways that this could play out. Like, for example, I could think about all of the ways in which I am like Richard Bandler. Now, given that he's been doing this for decades and given that he is like exceptionally good at it, if I think about all the ways in which Bandler and I are similar, it's like, okay, this is pretty good. This is a nice little boost to my self-esteem, a little bit of a kick for my morale. But that's about all that does. That's like if I need a bit of extra motivation in the moment, sure. What if I like mix it up a little bit? What if I think about all the ways that Bandler and I are different? Then all of a sudden things seem a bit like less good because he is a better practitioner of this stuff than I am. He's much more famous than I am. He gets invited to lead workshops and give talks and do all sorts of stuff that I don't get to do. And so if I look at like the differences between us, like what we do and the results that we get, it can be like, yeah, that's not so great. Uh, but I could take that as a map and go, okay, so here's what he does that's different from the way I do things. That does identify ways that I could change. Like if he uses techniques in a certain way and gets better results than I do, maybe this is an opportunity for me to level up my skills. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but this is quite confronting. I compare myself to someone who's very successful in what it is that I do, and it can be like the differences can be like pretty significant. But there are other ways that you can make a comparison like this. And many people make comparisons that are vaguely like this, but they do so with some like small modifications, which once it becomes obvious that this is what you do, it's like, obviously this is a bad idea. Obviously this is ridiculous. Obviously this is going to make me feel like, like just really frustrated by things. But people run these patterns in the unconscious. They don't know that they're doing it. So spotting this in yourself, being able to guide people to this, like to guide other people to this, can be really useful. Because what if, for example, I'm not just comparing my NLP skills to Richard Bandler's NLP skills, but I'm doing something which is pretty common for people to do, which is like like I think about myself on like my worst day. So like a day where it's just like I've just got like nothing going on, nothing is going right. Whatever I do with NLP, it's just backfiring, it's just fizzling, I'm just having like a shocker of a day, which thankfully not too many of those these days. But like everyone has days where they're at their worst, whatever that is. And I find myself comparing that with someone like Richard Bandler at his best, like what he does, like when he's just on. And like that is going to be an enormous difference. It's going to be huge. And that's not going to be a useful thing to like guide my learning or something. That's just going to be like catastrophically demoralizing. Me at my worst versus a superstar at their best, like that is enormous. And it's not a useful difference either. But people do this sort of thing. People do this sort of thing and all sorts of similar things too. Like, let's say that someone feels really stuck. They're just like, oh, I've been working at this skill for years or working on this business for years, and I'm just making like no progress. There's a good chance that what they're doing is they're looking at their past self or their past experience and they're looking at their current self and they're only looking at the ways in which that's the same. If you would actually pay attention to what is different, like what is different with your skills or your situation a year ago compared to now, it's like, oh, there's going to be like all sorts of different things. It's pretty easy to just like forget about those in the moment and just be like, here are all the ways in which everything is the same. Well, of course you're going to feel stuck. How are you not going to feel stuck if you're only paying attention to the parts that aren't making any progress? You're going to feel like you're making no progress. This is like, again, this is really obvious stuff, but we do this stuff unconsciously. Other people, they compare themselves, like let's say again, they compare themselves at their absolute worst now, comparing themselves with some hypothetical future where they've got all of this sorted out and they're just operating at their best. Again, this is going to be an enormous gap and it's not going to be a useful gap. So there are all sorts of ways that you can like tweak the parameters here because maybe you're thinking about like your current situation, your current skills, whatever it is. If you're only focusing on what you do like terribly, then as a fair comparison, you should only compare to like that against someone else who's doing something terribly. Like for an example, if I wanted to like compare my NLP skills, if I'm focusing on my worst day, then a fair comparison would be someone like Bandler on his worst day. And not even that is a fair comparison, because I should be like looking at Bandler in the past, because he's further along in his journey than I am. So me on a really bad day compared to Richard Bandler on a really bad day, Like back when he was at his stage in the career, his career that I am in mine, well, he'd still probably be better than I am, but like that's a much more manageable difference. And it's a much more reasonable thing to compare. If I compare myself at my absolute best, and I compare myself with Richard Bandler at his absolute best, like now, then I could like look at all of the ways in which we're similar, or I could look at all the ways in which we're different. Because me at my best, like thinking about the ways in which I'm similar to Bandler at his best, that's pretty cool. Again, this is a really nice thing for like a shot in the arm if I need some motivation. And if I look at like me at my best compared to Bandler at his best, and I'm looking at what's different, then there's going to be some useful things in there. There's going to be some stuff where it's like, okay, he gets different results than I do because he does different things from what I do, and there's going to be like some insights I can glean from there. So there's all sorts of these different ways that you can compare your situation to someone else's situation, or your present circumstances to your future circumstances, and these things have very different effects. So here's another one. Let's say you take your present ideal situation and you compare it with your future ideal situation. And you're paying attention to what's same there. This is a really nice way to like filter your attention for gratitude. Because it's like, yeah, in the future, I'm going to have like all of this freedom. Like, in what sense do you have that freedom now? If you're going to be successful in the future, what do you do now that's going to be the same in the future? All sorts of really interesting ways that you can play that out. And so this is called comparison sorting, because you're comparing yourself against someone else or your future self or your past self or like some other standard. And so you can compare yourself or you can compare yourself at your worst or yourself at your best compared to some past situation, some present situation, some future situation. And you can sort like that external situation by them at their best or them at their worst. So again, like you at your worst in the past is very different from you in the future at your best. Or if something like Richard Bandler, like what he can do now versus what he can do back in the day, him at his best, him at his worst, these are very different ways of comparing. And so you have yourself and you have this other thing that you're comparing against your future, your past, someone else, whatever it is. And then what are you like sorting for? Like, where are you directing your attention? Are you like comparing these two things by how they're similar, or are you comparing them by how they're different? And like, again, this is all like you see it mapped out. This is some pretty common sense stuff. Like once you see the shape of what it is that you're doing, it's obvious what the problem is, and it's obvious like how to fix it. This only ever affects people because it's just all unconscious. At least it was unconscious. So now you're able to spot this, and now you're able to make whatever adjustments you need to this pattern. If you find yourself noticing the differences between you and some other situation, some other person, and maybe it'd be more useful to focus on sameness. Or maybe you're comparing yourself at your worst to someone else at their best. Or if you've just started, you're comparing your current situation to someone else's current situation, whereas you've been at this for a short while and they've been at this their entire career. There are all sorts of ways that this plays out differently. And now that you know that this is just one of the patterns that can lurk in the back of your mind, I look forward to you changing it to whatever is more useful for you. And anyway, in the meantime, keep being awesome.